for the sake of my children. This is a tragic love story of an Australian Christian girl who falls in love with a Saudi Muslim man, then converts to Islam, marries her Arab lover, and travels with him to the Islamic world. She spends over 10 years among Muslims in Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, being held as captive wife by her Muslim husband in the Mujahideen training camps against her will. When she manages somehow to flee and return to the Western world, she authors her sad life story as a book under the title Irshad and the Abuse of Muslim Women. It was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. All characters in this book are fake, and any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Chapter 31. A new Western friend of the Australian widow. Many people in the Muslim world understand the war on terror as the war against Islam itself. But the so-called Islamic extremists, mujahideen, and terrorists are nothing but the followers of the pure form of Islam taught and practiced by the Prophet Muhammad and his companions, who were the first Muslims. Therefore, the Islamic terrorists are the true Muslims, while the so-called moderate Muslims do not faithfully and obediently follow the teachings of the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. Western leaders, media, and universities in Western countries such as Europe, America, Canada, and Australia are trying to convince people otherwise. Many Western leaders have wrongly claimed that terrorist groups such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Muslim Brotherhood, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, Janjaweed, Hamas, Hezbollah, and many others in the Muslim world are not true Muslims, but rather have a twisted version of Islam, which is the religion of peace. By this they mean that the terrorists have a wrong knowledge or ideology of Islam. These world leaders and famous Western media agencies, such as CNN and BBC World News, always present moderate Muslims as true Muslims while describing Islamic terrorists as extremists or fanatics. Despite this, the verses of the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad support and praise Islamic terrorists, promise them great rewards, and openly and vigorously condemn moderate Muslims as infidels and hypocrites. Anyway, when Sheikh Mohammed Noor Al-Faransi arrived in Pakistan, he had one American wife named Nadia Noor. They, as we mentioned earlier, were Christians and converted to Islam, like the Australian Susan Peterson, who changed her Christian religion and changed her name to Irshad Al-Shamari. The two lovers, Muhammad and Nadia, were known before converting to Islam as John and Mary. At that time, the couple did not have any children. As soon as they graduated from the Islamic school and moved to the Mujahideen camps in the Swat Valley, some Muslim leaders encouraged Mohammed Noor Al-Faransi to have a second Muslim wife because the Quran allows him to have 4 wives at the same time. But the second marriage caused a fundamental problem between him and his first American wife. Nadia found it difficult to share her husband with a beautiful young Afghan girl. The second wife is a minor, 15 years younger than her and 25 years younger than her husband, Muhammad. But the American wife Nadia was afraid of being accused of apostasy and executed on the spot if she questioned the verse of the Quran which says that a Muslim man has a legal religious license to marry 4 women at the same time. The Quran says to Muslim men, "And if you fear that you will not be just with regard to orphans, then marry as many women as you like." 2, 3, and 4. Surah An-Nisa 4, verse 3. This verse authorizes a Muslim man to marry 4 women at the same time and allows him to have sex with slave girls or female prisoners of war without marriage, and this, of course, is rape or adultery, permissible in Islam, the so-called religion of peace and love. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad used to sleep with a minor girl of 9 years old who was younger than him by 4 decades and 4 years, and he had 11 wives and 2 female slaves, Maria and Rahana, and he had sex with all of them, meaning he committed adultery with all 13 women in a halal rape. American wife Nadia began her Islamic life in the same way Australian wife Irshad began her abusive marital life. She was deceived by the Muslim community in Paris. It made her believe that Islam is the only religion that honors women and places them in the highest religious and social status. She was also told that other religions have turned women into dolls to expose the female sexy body in order to promote certain products as if they were slaves, while Islam commanded her to hide her body and show it only to her husband. She was further told that Islam treats men and women equally by creating them from one soul. Islam calls all Muslims brothers and sisters and thus discourages racial discrimination. Simply put, Nadia was told many good things about Islam that had nothing to do with it all. Unfortunately, Nadia, like Irshad, honestly believed every lie she was told about Islam. However, when she came to Pakistan and experienced real Islam with true Muslims, she discovered too late that she had been deceived. Moreover, Nadia, like Irshad, found herself detained in Mujahideen camps against her will. She was 8 months pregnant when her husband took the 13-year-old Afghan girl as legal Muslim wife number 2. By her Western standards, this marriage is child abuse and rape of a minor girl. However, her new faith in Islam would not allow her to use the Western standard to judge the Islamic license mentioned in the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 3. When she objected, she was silenced with an authentic hadith which showed that the Prophet Muhammad married and had sex with a 9-year-old child bride named Aisha. Her husband proudly read to her the famous hadith that is on the tip of every Muslim's tongue. The messenger wrote the marriage contract with Aisha when she was 6 years old, and he consummated the marriage with her when she was 9 years old, and she stayed with him for 9 years. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 62, Hadith number 89. He also showed her a verse in the Muslim book of the Holy Quran that allows a Muslim man to marry and have sex with a minor girl, Surah Al-Talaq 65, verse 4. The second severe problem that the American wife faces with her French husband is his terrorist activities. And she discovered that her husband was promoted in a fleeting time to the rank of Emir, and under his leadership there are hundreds of Mujahideen who he sends from time to time to carry out terrorist operations in Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. Moreover, her husband always boasted of his intelligence in masterminding successful terrorist attacks against NATO forces in Afghanistan and assassinating some prominent Muslim political leaders in Pakistan. Whenever Nadia tried to persuade her husband to hold back his hands from the shedding of innocent blood, he would always silence her by quoting verses from the Holy Quran and referring her to the many authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad to justify the killing of infidels in jihad in the cause of God. After giving birth to her first child, Nadia discovered that her husband had become one of the most wanted leaders of Islamic terrorists in the world. She decided to leave him and run away with her child out of Pakistan and try to return to America. But in practice, Nadia found that her escape from those strongholds of terrorists in the Swat Valley was next to impossible. She also expected that the Pakistani police would arrest her and throw her behind bars for her association with the Mujahideen, especially her marriage to a wanted terrorist leader. She may be sold by the Pakistani Authority to the American Marines. Nadia was told that the CIA had promised a $5,000 reward to any police officer or Pakistani citizen who would report a terrorist or anyone associated with the Islamic Mujahideen. Such a Muslim terrorist, after his arrest, will be severely interrogated and then transferred to Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. Many innocent Pakistanis and Afghans were falsely accused of terrorists and for financial gain sold to the U.S. Marines. Accordingly, Nadia finds herself, like Irshad, stuck in the strongholds of these Islamic terrorists against her will. Meanwhile, the Australian widow, Irshad, has begun searching for her 2 kidnapped sons, Abu Bakr and Omar, in some small towns and villages on the border between Pakistan and India. For a few months, her efforts came to nothing. No one seemed to have seen or heard of the 2 abducted sons from the names she gave them and the descriptions she mentioned. Finally, the widow, Irshad, received some advice from a retired former terrorist leader of the jihad against the infidels, following a dangerous ambush in which he fell, which led to the amputation of both his legs and hands. The commander told her that he knew her sons and that they were under his command. After his fatal accident, the Mujahideen who were under his supervision spread all over the country. Then he told her that the last thing he heard about her two sons was that they were carrying out jihad against the foreign Christian infidels in the Swat Valley. The last place on earth that the Australian mother Irshad would like to return to is the Valley of the Shadow of Death. She fears that anything will happen to her in her voluntary return to the strongholds of Islamic terrorists. The Mujahideen may accuse her of treason to escape with her 6 Muslim children out of Pakistan. She remembered the letter written by her late husband, instructing her not to smuggle his Muslim 7 children out of the Mujahideen camps and transfer them to the land of the infidels, Australia, or anywhere else in the West. She also believed that the news of her conversion to Christianity had already reached those who knew her before, and therefore they might accuse her of apostasy and put her to death. She may also be sentenced to death for allowing Christian families in Canada to adopt her Muslim sons and daughters. However, for the sake of her 2 sons, the brave woman decided to take the risk and return to the Swat Valley, which she knows is more dangerous than the Valley of Shadow of Death mentioned by the prophet David in one of the Psalms. And that she is a Christian now, she has decided that she will pretend that she is still a believer in Islam. After spending many days traveling by train, trucks, and even animals such as donkeys, oxen, and horses, the Australian widow Irshad Al-Shamari finally reached the strongholds of Muslim terrorists in the Valley of the Shadow of Death. She has no protection for her life other than her newfound faith in her Lord, Jesus Christ. Whenever she faced danger, she would pray to the Lord, and he would always answer her. By the time Irshad reached Swat Valley, the Pakistani government had allowed Taliban and al-Qaeda terrorists fleeing Afghanistan to implement Islamic Sharia laws. Therefore, the Mujahideen of the Taliban are the sole rulers and judges in those places. The Pakistani government has no power or control over all the cities and towns in that dreaded valley. Accordingly, the flogging of thieves, the stoning of adulterers, and the beheading of apostates and traitors are common practices in that Islamic region, which is forbidden to enter for Western infidels from NATO forces, Western radio correspondents, and every non-Muslim. Every day, people gather in their hundreds to witness these corporal punishments as if they were in a Roman Colosseum where condemned people were eaten alive by hungry lions or forced to fight with titanic gladiators. These ruthless Muslims enjoy watching the horrific scenes of beheadings and stoning more than Europeans enjoy watching football matches. Australian widow Irshad Al-Shamari has arrived in the strongholds of the Taliban and al-Qaeda after an exceptionally long and stressful journey. She hid her face and her entire body in the humiliating Islamic burqa, or abaya, and niqab. As soon as word of her return reached the ears of the women who had known her in the past, she was welcomed by them as a great heroine or fighter soldier. It was as if these oppressed and tortured Muslim women lived on a different planet and therefore had not heard anything about what happened to her during her 7 years of wandering. When they learned that she had spent 4 years in the notorious infidels' prison at Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, they praised her courage and suffering in the way of God. The Australian mother, Irshad, was not surprised by the ignorance of these Muslim women because she knows that none of them went to school and that none of them had access to radio or television. However, she fears that when these women tell their husbands, her hidden secret may be exposed, and thus she may face dire consequences. Mother Irshad began her research in the Swat Valley very carefully and secretly. She avoided contact with any prominent Muslim leader among the Mujahideen. She focused her inquiry on women's circles and groups of private and women-only religious congregations. In a fleeting period, Irshad became friends with some Pakistani and Afghani women. Through her female friends, she tried to find out if their husbands, sons, or brothers had heard of 2 brothers named Abu Bakr and Omar Mustafa Al-Shamari. Although these women asked their husbands and other male relatives about the sons of Irshad, none of them had heard of these names among the Mujahideen. She knew her next chance was to turn to Arab women. But her previous life among the Mujahideen made her know that the wives and daughters of the Arab Mujahideen have more knowledge of the outside world than the local women. As a result, she fears that she will be in serious trouble if an Arab woman recognizes her and reveals to her Muslim men her apostasy from Islam and conversion to Christianity. As Irshad wonders about her next move, an Afghan woman informs her about the American Muslim woman Nadia Noor, the first wife of the French man, Sheikh Mohammed Noor. This woman believed that Nadia would be able to help Irshad locate her two missing sons. In addition, the Australian widow Irshad learned from that woman that Nadia is a white woman like herself and that her husband is also a white man. The Australian woman liked the suggestion and asked the Afghan woman to introduce her to the white woman, Nadia. By the time the widow, Irshad, arrived in Swat Valley, the American wife, Nadia, had 2 children with her French husband, Mohammed Noor. Her husband had already had 4 wives by that time. The other 2 of his wives are 2 underage Afghani girls and a little Pakistani girl. He married 2 of these girls in 1 year and married the 4th wife the following year. Although Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi is on the list of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation as one of the most wanted terrorists in the world, he still manages his married life in a way that no one knew when he came to sleep with his wives and when he left them. One fact is clear to the Pakistani ISI, that Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi is living a normal married life which has resulted in all his 4 wives becoming pregnant and all the women giving birth to his children. The American wife, Nadia Noor, was incredibly happy when she met the Australian widow, Irshad al-Shamari. At first, Irshad was cautious in informing Nadia of the reason for her return. However, when the American wife talked about her misery and suffering in that hellish place of the terrorist Mujahideen and her desire to escape from Pakistan and return to her motherland in the United States of America with her 2 children, the Australian mother told her the reason for her return to Swat Valley. Moreover, Nadia shared with Irshad how her French husband changed when he came to Pakistan and how the Muslim community in Paris deceived her about the status of women in Islam. While the American wife was telling her bitter experience of living in a terrorist environment, the Australian widow felt as if she could hear her voice telling her bitter experience and her tragic life story. Nadia's experience is similar to her bitter experience, and her misery is like her misery as well. The only difference between the 2 white women is that Irshad miraculously managed to escape from those concentration camps, but Nadia is still being held as a prisoner with her 2 children against her will. Encouraged by Nadia's frankness and openness, Irshad trusted her and revealed some of her secrets to her, but she did not tell her about leaving Islam and embracing Christianity. Moreover, Irshad informs Nadia that she plans to return to her country, Australia, once she finds her 2 kidnapped sons, Abu Bakr and Omar. Then Nadia promised Irshad that she would try to help her get information about her 2 missing sons. But how will she do that? The American girl, Nadia Noor, refused to reveal that secret information to her new Australian friend. Irshad confided in Nadia and promised that she would try to help her escape if she were serious about leaving Pakistan and returning to her motherland without her French Muslim husband. As the days passed, the friendship between the 2 white women gradually developed until the 2 friends revealed to each other the heavy hidden secrets that they had kept from each other in the beginning. Nadia told Irshad that she did something good by abandoning the dreaded Islam that was filled with misogynistic teachings and terrorism and returning to Christianity, the peaceful religion that values women and gives them equal rights with their male counterparts. She also told her that if she could escape from Pakistan and return to her country America, she would do the same and openly expose the deceptions and evils of Islam. Australian widow Irshad encouraged American wife Nadia to start praying to Jesus Christ even before she ran away. Nadia followed the advice of her friend Irshad, apostatized from Islam, reconverted to Christianity, and started praying to the Lord Jesus from her heart. Chapter 32. The 2 white Western women's escape plan. Despite her promise of help, Australian woman Irshad begins to doubt she can help her new American friend Nadia escape with her 2 children when she finds out who she married. She fears that Nadia will be captured by the Pakistani police and tortured once she ventures out of Swat Valley. She knows in this valley that the Pakistani police have no power or control. Irshad also doubted Nadia's return to her country of origin upon knowing the identity of her terrorist husband, who is wanted by the U.S. government. The fact that Nadia is the wife of such a dangerous terrorist leader as Sheikh Mohammed Nur al-Fransi would put the American woman Nadia in more trouble with the CIA in her country than the Australian Irshad was exposed to in Canada. Therefore, the widow, Irshad, suggested that the wife, Nadia, not approach the American embassy in Islamabad and not try to leave Pakistan through any airport or port. The only safe way out for her is to try to smuggle herself and her 2 children across the Pakistani-Indian border in the disputed Kashmir region between the 2 countries. If she can do so, she must hide her identity and follow the same process that Irshad followed when she ended up in New Delhi and became a refugee. She must pretend to be a French Muslim woman, and Muslim terrorists in Pakistan have killed her French husband. Nadia accepted her friend Irshad's advice and waited for the right time to escape. Although the Australian widow warned her of the danger she would face if she took the same path she took 7 years ago, the American woman said she was ready to face any danger to flee from those terrorist places. Like Irshad, Nadia is determined not to raise her 2 sons among these ruthless Muslim barbarians. She does not want them to follow in the footsteps of their father, the dangerous terrorist leader. Meanwhile, Australian mother Irshad al-Shamari waited patiently for 6 months before her friend, the American wife Nadia Nur, finally found out what happened to her 2 sons, who were kidnapped from her at gunpoint. According to information collected by Nadia from some reliable sources, the son Abu Bakr, who is the son of Irshad with her Saudi husband Mustafa, participated in the terrorist attacks of Lashkar-e-Taiba on the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel in Bombay, India. He was killed by Indian commandos along with other terrorists. There was only one terrorist who was arrested, tried, and sentenced to death by the Bombay High Court and hanged 1 year after his arrest. Her second son, Omar Mustafa al-Shamari, was killed in an airstrike launched by an American drone on the Mujahideen in the Swat Valley. The sad news was very devastating and heartbreaking for the Australian mother, Irshad. She concluded that she had lost all 9 of her children and that the only person to blame was herself. After receiving this heartbreaking news, the heartbroken mother decided to get as far as possible from those who brainwashed her 2 sons and caused their untimely deaths. However, she knows that wherever she goes, she will bring with her memories of the grim reality of being for so long a Muslim wife of a notorious terrorist. It's like the stigma written all over her face, or the mark of the beast 666 that nothing can erase from her life of persecution and abuse. The widow, Irshad, did not feel sorry for the death of her late husband, Mustafa. Even after many years, she still hates him and holds him responsible for all her misery, suffering, and persecution in her painful life that she lived in the Islamic world, and even her imprisonment in Kandahar, Afghanistan, and in the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. It was he who deceived her with his false love and introduced her to that satanic cult that is universally called Islam, what is falsely called the religion of peace. Because of him, she entered the maximum security prison, Guantanamo, which is reserved for the worst Muslim terrorists, and was imprisoned there for 4 years, and she was deprived of all her 9 children. Therefore, the Australian widow, Irshad, has always hated her Saudi Muslim husband, Mustafa, with bitterness, and wished in her heart that he would burn in the fire of hell forever and ever. Mother Irshad's bitter experience of marrying a terrorist made her understand how her friend, Nadia, is going through at the present time. In her heart, she hoped that the American mother Nadia would not go through those painful experiences of entering prison and losing all her children as she went through. She even prayed to God to grant her white friend a safe exit from Pakistan and an easy and safe return to her native America. She hoped that the beautiful American woman would not be gang-raped by military soldiers on the Pakistani-Indian border, and that the terrorists would not kidnap her 2 sons from her, as happened to her and her late 2 sons many years ago. While she was praying for Nadia, Irshad felt it was her duty as a good Christian to help her friend with her escape plan. She knows that it is dangerous for a young and beautiful girl like Nadia to flee with her 2- and 3-year-old sons across the dangerous Pakistani and Indian borders between those dangerous snowy mountains. She needs someone who knows the way to accompany her. The widow Irshad recalled the guidance of the parable of the Good Samaritan that Jesus had taught his disciples. Believing in the good teaching of her God, the Australian woman decided to sacrifice her safety for her American friend. She also remembered the kindness and love of the good American guard who fell in love with her in her solitary confinement in Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. She named him the Good Samaritan. It was his secret love, hugs, and warm kisses that made her spend 4 years in that hellish prison without becoming depressed, insane, or attempting suicide. Having come to this conclusion, Irshad revealed her decision to her friend Nadia. The American wife was deeply moved by the rare love and sacrifice she had never experienced in her life. So, Nadia thanked Irshad 1,000,000 times and told her that she would never forget such sacrificial love that could never emanate from the heart of a Muslim woman. Then the two white friends decide to escape undercover from the strongholds of the Taliban. They know that in this male-dominated society, a woman will not be allowed to leave her home alone without the company of her husband or a close male relative such as her father or brother. It is a serious crime punishable by Sharia law if a woman is caught walking in the street alone, even if she is accompanied by another woman. For this reason, the two friends, Irshad and Nadia, decided to leave at a time when neither the armed Islamic guards nor the other Muslim men could discover them. They know from experience that the only time nearly every man is out of sight is the public Friday noon prayer. For an hour, all men, young and old, must attend the compulsory communal Friday prayers in mosques. It is against the law in all Muslim countries for a man to skip that prayer without a real reason or an acceptable legitimate excuse, and sometimes illness is not an excuse. In countries that have implemented Sharia law, such as Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Somalia, and Sudan, any male aged 7 years and over who is not found inside a mosque on a Friday afternoon will be beaten mercilessly by God's so-called correctional police of Allah. Sometimes, these policemen of God would knock on people's homes and check if there were men hiding inside. By law, every man must close his shop or office and attend the compulsory Friday prayers. When the two friends hatched their escape plan, it was Sunday. They must wait 5 days before they can carry out their plan. During those days, they reviewed the details of their expected to be difficult escape and prepared everything they deemed necessary for their long and perilous journey from the Swat Valley in Pakistan to the Kashmir district of India. The Australian widow told the American wife that the Indian army would possibly detain them when they crossed the border. Irshad hid from Nadia her bitter experience with the 3 Indian soldiers who arrested, beat, and gang-raped her. She didn't want to put too much fear into her friend's heart. Moreover, she believed that not every Indian man was as evil as those 3 soldiers who had brutally beaten and raped her cruelly in their military detention. Whether it was divine intervention or bad luck, something unexpected happened on Thursday evening when the two Western friends had less than 24 hours left to carry out their risky escape plan. While Irshad is in her tent in the evening, Nadia unexpectedly walks in on her. The expression on her sad face revealed that she had some sad news to tell. Irshad shouted at her friend, "What happened?" "I have bad and sad news. I won't be able to escape with you at noon tomorrow." "Why can't you escape?" "Because my French husband is coming to spend some time with me. Why don't you ignore his request and let us run away before he comes?" "I can't do that. The people he sent to take me to him are here, and they won't let me escape alive." "Who are they?" "Where will they take you to meet him?" "I do not know, but they usually take me to meet him at a hotel. But I don't know which hotel. Every time they take me to meet him in another hotel and a different city or village." "Are you going to take your 2 sons with you?" He's only interested in sex, not his 2 kids or his other children whom he fathered with his other 3 Muslim wives. "Where are you going to keep your sons?" "Usually, I keep them with my babysitter. I pay her money for it. Since you're here, I'd appreciate it if you did for me." I'll pay you too. Of course, it is my pleasure to take care of your children, but how long will you be away? I don't know that either. That depends on him. It may take a few hours or longer. Usually, he would spend a few hours with me and his 3 other women, and soon he would run away and leave. He is always hiding and running from the US Marines and other NATO military forces. Irshad became deep in thought for a few seconds before she asked Nadia, "Do you really love him, and would you like to have sex with him?" "I used to love him when we were intimate lovers in France. But after we came here, a lot has changed. From being an angel of love, he turned into a demon of death. He married many women next to me and killed many innocent people. Every now and then, he sends young teenage mujahideen on suicide missions. His hands are stained with the blood of many innocent people. I really don't love him anymore, but I hate him so bitterly that I wish him death. That's why I don't mind leaving him, taking my children, and running away from him." "Well, that's a good word. I will take care of your 2 sons in your absence while you are away with your husband. But I'm still on my word. If not this Friday, I will run away with you next Friday for sure. We'll talk about it again. Just go, my dear, to him now and pretend as if you've never met me." "I will definitely do that." Sometimes, our best friends may make decisions on our behalf that seem wrong and dangerous to us, but eventually prove to be in our favor. This is exactly what Australian woman Irshad decided to do for her American friend Nadia. She decides to inform the police about the location of her friend's notorious terrorist husband. Irshad already knew from the media that the CIA was desperately looking for him. He was placed on the FBI's list of the world's top 3 most wanted terrorists. She also learned that the US government promised a reward of $50 million for the person who would provide information on his hiding place. The abused Australian widow is not interested in reward, but her main concern is to save innocent people from the hands of such a ruthless terrorist. Moreover, the Australian mother, Irshad, considered it an excellent opportunity for the police to arrest the dangerous Muslim leader, Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi, while he was meeting with his American wife, Nadia, and his 3 other Muslim wives. However, the question that puzzled her was, how will she approach the Pakistani police and inform them of Sheikh Mohammed Noor while the Pakistani police are protecting him? This dangerous act could be fatal for her and her friend. If the Pakistani police inform him that a white female confidant of his first Muslim wife is trying to arrest him, he may arrange for his American woman and her Australian friend to be killed as well. After thoughtful consideration, the Australian mother, Irshad, gave up the idea of reporting him to the police and decided to wait for her American friend Nadia to meet her French husband and return. But suddenly, a brilliant idea flashed in her mind, and she decided to try it. She felt as if this thought had been injected into her mind by some supernatural being. It is like a revelation from God. She remembered her Good Samaritan Christian guard at Guantanamo Bay, who gave her a copy of the Gideon Holy Bible and invited her to attend Sunday services at church. Due to the restrictions of the detention center, Australian detainee Irshad and her American boyfriend could not push their friendship beyond those closed walls. Despite this, she has enjoyed his friendship for 4 years and his willingness to help her even if it sometimes puts his job at risk. As she loved him, she knew he loved her too. She still loves him very much and hopes to meet him outside the notorious Gitmo detention center of the Muslim terrorists and marry him. At any rate, after her release, the pretty Australian woman Irshad became so busy with her children's custody that she almost forgot about her loving, handsome American boyfriend. She did neither write to him nor try to communicate with him in any way. She doesn't even know his name despite their long love. She called him the Good Samaritan, and he was glad to hear that Christian name. However, on that Thursday evening nearly 2 years later, the beautiful Australian woman Irshad decided to speak to her boyfriend, the handsome American guard at Guantanamo Bay, and seek his advice on such a serious matter. During her legal dispute with the CIA while in Australia, and while she was trying to get her name removed from the blacklist and people who cannot be flown, Irshad obtained from her lawyer the phone number of the detention camp at Guantanamo Bay. She even overheard some phone conversations between her Australian lawyer and some U.S. Marines in that terrorist detention center. That evening, Ershad decided to call her former detention center and ask them to let her talk to her American guard. She used a local Pakistani phone center known as STD and made her call. When Ershad called, it was evening in Pakistan and day in Guantanamo Island. That evening, the sweet, beloved Australian Ershad spoke to her friend, the beloved American, and revealed to him the reason for her call. Her boyfriend took the information seriously and reported it to his senior responsible boss. Ershad was praised by some senior CIA agents for her courage and willingness to assist the law in apprehending such a dangerous terrorist. During her phone conversation, these CIA agents ordered Australian mother Ershad to follow her American friend Nadia and those who had come to take her to her dangerous terrorist husband, Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi. She was told that she should not tell them she was following them or let them know about her. Once she knew where Nadia would meet her husband, the CIA agents gave Ershad a local phone number and told her to call that number and tell the person answering the call the name of the place and hotel where the dangerous terrorist leader Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi, who was wanted dead or alive, was staying. After that, she was told that her duty would be finished. She will then be free to go wherever she wants to go. Ershad sets some conditions for the CIA agents that she will not follow her American friend unless she is given a solemn promise that she will not be harmed and that the persecuted Muslim wife Nadia Noor will be given the right to return to America and be received as a great heroine and not as the wife of a dangerous terrorist leader. CIA agents accepted her terms. In fact, Ershad has lied to the American agents by telling them that her American friend Nadia is an important figure in her plan to capture her evil French husband. She lied to protect her friend. After her phone call, Ershad arranged with an Afghan woman to babysit Nadia's 2 children. She does not want her American friend to doubt her good intentions, so she decides to keep her 2 children with a babysitter and follow her secretly without her knowledge and the knowledge of those who came to take her to her husband. The hotel where the first Muslim wife Nadia and the 3 other wives of the notorious Islamic terrorist leader Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi were brought by the Pakistani police to spend time with their polygamous husband is in a small town near the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. By orders of the White Devil, Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi, the hotel is guarded by 50 terrorists, armed to the teeth. There are more than 40 Pakistani policemen in addition to this number of his bodyguards. In addition, prior to that day, the Pakistani police had spent 3 days searching and clearing the town of any suspicious persons. No new visitors have been able to enter the high-security area after it was sealed off by the Pakistani police. The town itself is out of reach of the Pakistani army and is a stronghold of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda Mujahideen. Accordingly, the capture of the dangerous terrorist leader Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi in that remote town would require more than 1,000 U.S. Marines and other NATO forces. Chapter 33. Heavenly Judgment on the People of Sodom and Gomorrah. Inside the hotel, like the famous polygamist and notorious adulterer, the Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid in his time, the white Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi is surrounded by his 4 Muslim wives and a large number of maids from every tribe in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Even Arab pretty women were reduced to the status of non-Arab Muslims and forced to serve and entertain the great French Muslim Caliph or the new Turkish Sultan of the Islamic Empire or Caliphate. Even the Prophet Muhammad in his time did not receive this glorification and a large number of lovely and sexy harems. Each of these beautiful women and pretty maidservants, according to the new interpretation of the 3rd verse of Surat al-Nisa, is permissible for the French sheikh to sleep with her without the sanctity of the permissible Islamic marriage. In fact, Sheikh Mohammed Noor sought to return Islam to its golden age when the Abbasid Caliph spent millions of dinars entertaining them, and each one slept with thousands of virgins each year of his life. It was stated in the annals of these caliphs that the caliph would not sleep with the same virgin more than once, and like the Prophet Muhammad, no one could have sex with the woman he slept with even after his death. Even Al-Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, who married 200 women, did not sleep with the number of women and underage female children that Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi slept with and raped. Meanwhile, the Australian widow, Irshad, has been able to follow the 4 cars used by the Pakistani police to transport the 4 Muslim wives of Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi to the town where they are supposed to meet their polygamous husband to have sex with him. He also would rape in halal Islamic adultery other beautiful virgin maids, Arabs and Asians. Fortunately, because she was a woman, Irshad was able to have easy entry into the forbidden and guarded town. She has actually bribed her Pakistani taxi driver and made him pretend to be her Muslim husband. Therefore, she was not intercepted on the way, nor was she arrested by the Correctional Police of Allah when she reached the fortified stronghold town. She hid her face and body with a large Islamic abaya and niqab, so she was not identified as a white woman. She could see the presence of these armed terrorists in every nook and cranny of the small town. Therefore, the Australian widow, Irshad al-Shamari, questioned the possibility of arresting the French terrorist husband, Mohammed Noor, of her American friend, Nadia Noor, without causing heavy losses in human lives. She even became worried about her life and the safety of Nadia's life. However, the Australian woman Irshad concluded that the lives of the thousands of innocent people killed each year by the mujahideen of the Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor must weigh above the lives of very few people in that small town. The Australian widow Irshad kept following those 4 cars until they stopped in front of a beautiful hotel. Then, from a distance, she saw her American friend Nadia and 3 other veiled girls get out of the cars and enter the hotel. She waited a while before deducing that this was the hotel where the pedophile sheikh planned to spend time with women. Then, she jotted down the name of the hotel in her notebook and told her driver to back off and take her to another nearby town. Once in the nearest town, Irshad asked her driver to stop and wait for her to call a female relative. She immediately called the local number given to her, reported the name of the town and the hotel, and said not one more word as to who she was or why she was in that place. Then she waited patiently in that place, expecting to soon see God's judgment upon the rebellious people of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Irshad stayed until midnight without seeing any of the U.S. Marines or NATO forces attacking the haunted town and raiding the beautiful hotel. Despite this, she continued to stay in her lair. Meanwhile, the Australian widow, Irshad al-Shamari, continued to pray to God, asking and begging for the safety of her American friend, Nadia Noor. It was about 4 in the morning when the white foreign woman hiding outside the town suddenly saw the quiet dark night illuminated by the huge flames of bombs dropped by some planes. Airstrikes continued in the small town until Irshad saw the sunrise on the eastern horizon. After seeing flames and smoke and witnessing the constant bombardment of the town, the hiding white woman doubted that anyone was still alive. As a result, she regrets her decision and begins to feel guilty for betraying her American friend Nadia, causing her sudden death and brutally killing her as if she were a Muslim female terrorist with an explosive belt. However, Irshad decides to wait until the airstrikes are over and return to the stricken town and find out what happened to her friend Nadia. After the airstrikes stopped and the bright sunlight lit up the entire area, Irshad waited for some time before starting to move toward the town that had been bombarded by foreign planes. She stopped after she suddenly saw some helicopters flying over the town and some commandos jumping out of it. Irshad saw that some of these commandos with their parachutes had landed near where she sat and watched the war from a distance. She is tempted to show herself to them and tell them that she has reported to the CIA about the hideout of the white terrorist, Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi. But she is afraid that the commandos will either shoot her or not believe her words. Instead, she just kept sitting in her hideout until she was sure all those commandos had entered town. The Australian woman Irshad can hear the gun battle inside the attacked town. She understood that the commandos engaged in fierce street fighting with the Mujahideen. It felt like the ultimate battle between God's angels led by Archangel Michael and Lucifer's demons led by the damned devil himself. This realization gave her hope that her American friend Nadia Noor might still be safe and alive. Brave Australian widow Irshad knew the dangers of returning to the war zone, but decided to go there. Her taxi driver is reluctant to drive his car to such a dangerous war zone. She promised him she would pay him to double what he would ask if he took her back to the town. Then the cabbie drove her to the outskirts of town, but refused to venture any further. Irshad paid her fare double and continued her dangerous adventure on foot, alone and unarmed. As soon as she entered, she saw the bodies of dead or seriously wounded mujahideen scattered everywhere in the streets of the stricken town. She can also see the commandos filling the streets with machine guns in hand, ready to shoot anyone who resists. She knows as a woman that she will not be shot until she shows any sign of resistance or threat to life towards the commandos. Before speaking to the commandos, Irshad revealed her white face and head of blonde hair to show that she was an Australian woman, not a Pakistani or an Afghan woman. Then she began speaking to some of these commandos in English and told them who she was and why she had taken such a risk to return to town. The commandos tell her that they know nothing about her and her American friend Nadia. They assured her that they would not shoot anyone unless he refused to surrender. Ignoring the words of the commandos she spoke to, Irshad headed to the hotel, where she knew that her American friend Nadia had come to meet her French terrorist husband. When she arrived at the hotel, she was surprised to learn that this was the only place in the occupied town that had not been hit by airstrikes. Upon her arrival, she finds that the commandos have already entered the hotel and arrested everyone inside, including the staff, workers, and guests. When she tried to enter the hotel, she was told that the place was closed by the U.S. Marines and no one could enter. Then Irshad inquired about the place where the detainees had been taken. No one seemed ready to tell her anything. Then the Australian woman, Irshad, searched everywhere in the center of the burning town for her American friend Nadia Noor or any information about her, but she did not find anything. She even examined some of the corpses of the Mujahideen men and women killed during the airstrikes, but was unable to find Nadia's body. Finally, the Pakistani police forced her to leave. By then, the Pakistani police took charge of the town after the NATO commandos withdrew after handing over the occupied place to the local security authority. Irshad decides to go back to the city where she is staying and contact her American boyfriend in Gitmo. She felt that CIA agents had deceived her and had not kept their promise to ensure the safety of her innocent friend, Nadia. Irshad concluded that the commandos failed in their operation to arrest the dangerous terrorist, Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Fransawi, as well. Moreover, she thought most likely that the evil leader had fled the hotel and the town during the airstrikes. Perhaps the cowardly Muslim man left his 4 wives and fled alone with the help of the Pakistani police. Then, the commandos likely captured or killed her friend Nadia and the evil man's other 3 wives during their raid on the hotel. In addition, the Australian widow Irshad became terribly angry because the CIA sent those planes, hit the town, and killed many innocent people while the real criminal managed to escape safely.